I know shortly after we released our book, you came out with a book too, and I hate to say it, but I have only seen glimpses of it. I should pick up a copy, but tell us a little bit about that book, if you would.
So that book is called Aspen Journey, Past to Present, and I was the editor of that book. And it was written by my friend Susan Dalton, who lives here in Telluride, and she had written, she had published a book on Telluride, a book on Durango, and a book on Denver. And she always wanted to do a book on Aspen, but she really didn't know that much about Aspen. So she asked me if I would help her with it, and I was so honored to be able to do that book.
Hey.
And we did it in collaboration, really, with the Aspen Historical Society. A lot of the pictures came out of the Aspen Historical Society, which has an incredible archive of photographs. And it was, she had a certain way, she worked with a graphic artist in France, and she had a certain way of doing these books. And it's really unique, and it's beautiful.
Yes.
And, we just wanted it to be a really positive book about Aspen, because, Aspen has its ups and downs through the years, and, some of it's great, some of it isn't. But I said from the very beginning, let's please make this just a really positive book about the founders of the ski area. It's a beautiful book. It's at Explore, it's at Carl's, it's at, I think the Herbert Bayer Museum was carrying it, the Aspen Historical Society. It's kind of all Gorsuch.
You can probably order it in any bookstore, I would imagine, with the ISDN number, I would assume.
Well,
right?
It's on Amazon.
Okay, so yeah.
And we just went around to every place that I could think of in Aspen, and they carry it all over the place. And it's a beautiful book. It's mostly about the beginning of Aspen and how the 10th Mountain Division was so influential. And then it goes into the Pepke's, of course, and music and environmental groups, and just the history of Aspen.
For me, it's probably the most real, authentic book about Aspen. We write about lives and stories and give you a little insight and little, stand by me moment kind of thing. But what you captured was sort of all the real essence of what made Aspen Aspen. And I felt like it was so cool because there's such history that I knew of, but I didn't really know. And that book is so in depth with all that it's so great to have something like that. You know what I mean? It's almost like just the facts, ma'am. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, that's what it was. It was just the facts,
Yeah.
That's I'm gonna order one. Mention the name of the title again for folks that have never heard of it.
It's called Aspen Journey, Past to Present.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a great book. I've been trying to get it into like the Little Nell so that it's in all the rooms, and because there's just so many wonderful people that developed Aspen to where it is today. And it talks about the Aspen Institute. It talks about the Bayer Museum, Herbert Bayer and his influence from the Bauhaus coming to Aspen. It talks about the development of snowmass. It talks about the ski racing that we had in Aspen with all the famous ski racers who came through. Stein Eriksen in the very, very early days, as the director of Aspen Highlands, up to, Spider Savage and the Mayer brothers, and it's kind of just like brief little moments, talks about brief things within the history of our town, which is so rich. I mean, honestly, I need a whole nother book on just the ranching community in Aspen, because that sort of suffered in our book. We didn't have enough time or pages to include the ranching community, but the ranchers, oh my gosh, somebody should just do a book about the ranching community in Aspen.
Man, Tony, you had to get together with Tony on that one.
Oh gosh, yes, he's the person to do the ranching book.
It's important to keep all that stuff alive in the memory of it, just to keep it out there front and center.
Well, I think
especially as the town transforms but I was going to say, you mentioned back, to keep the book positive. Andy and I and Dean and Lo are kind of on that same path. I mean, let's just admit it. We could have written the dark volume 2 of the darkness that happens in Aspen too, but we focus.
Well, I think Jay Cowan took care of that with Scandal Aspen. It is such a good book, and your book also, by the way, is awesome. I read it and I loved the stories. And another local artist or writer who just published a book is Lou Dawson, and his book is fabulous too. Really,
I got to get that.
If you haven't read it,
what's the title of it?
What is the title of it? It'll come to me in a minute. But the Dawsons, they grew up in Aspen, and they were a really important part of like the climbing community, and just kind of, I used to go over to the Dawson's house after school because his mother, Pat, would make us all hot brownies, So they were the original hippies in Aspen, and I just love that part. And they built the most beautiful homes, really. I will never forget the home they had up Highway 82, and you would walk in and it was just a jungle inside, and Pat would always be cooking bread and just taking in all these people who didn't have places to live, and it was such a wonderful home. And
where was that? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was, if you drive up Independence Pass, and it is right before, or maybe right after you turn into the old Scheimer apartments. Remember the Scheimer apartments? Gerald Scheimer.
Past Mountain Valley.
Just right past Mountain Valley on the right. Okay. And it's been torn down since then. And then they also built a beautiful house up Castle Creek. And it was Craig and his 4 sons who built those houses. They would just go out there and get some land and build a house. And the I think it's called Avalanche. What is the name of Lou Dawson's book? Sorry, Lou. I wish I'm blanking on it right now. No problem. It's stories about Aspen in the early days, and it's just really, really special. I think you guys will really like it.
Yeah. There've been quite a few books about Aspen, and some of them are more historical based, like yours, and then there are some that are more. I don't know if you ever read Marty Sterling's book,
Avalanche Dreams. That's what it is.
Oh, Avalanche Dreams. Thank you. Yeah, Marty Sterling's The Day of Stein and Roses.
Yeah,
right. That one and Fisher the Fixer.
Yeah.
About Freddie
Fisher the Fixer, and then you have Jack Bredlinger's book too. I can't remember the name of it. Give me a second, I'll remember it.
And Bruce Berger, who is a wonderful writer in Aspen.
Don't get mad, get even. That was Jack Bredlinger's.
Oh.
He's kind of like the original Merry Prankster, that.
Uh-huh.
Well, I feel like when you talk about going over and having brownies at that person's place, that I grew up with that in Aspen too, where all the homes and all the people lived in everywhere. And I feel like the change I'm noticing is that almost all the locals now live in employee housing, and all the homes are owned by people who don't really show up there very much. So when you go into a neighborhood, you'll see 1 or 2 homes that have people, and the rest are dormant. Whether it's the East End or Mountain Park or wherever you go, that is pretty much the dominant thing that I noticed last time I was there. And I felt like, to me, that's why when I think of Aspen as the community, is because that existed there. And it's interesting because I don't know I mean, how do you, the community, you kind of need that. You know what I mean? The Tachets were right down the street from me, you know, and Mark was way older than us, so I'd see him, but he was like the old kid, you know, and I was like the little young 12-year-old kid playing on Little League. But that kind of connection between generations and families and right next door, I don't know if I mean, in Telluride you get that, but in Aspen right now, I don't know if you really get that. And it's sad to me because that's what made it so special.
Yeah, and I agree. You know, you're reminding me when you talked about the Tachets, the Wright family who had the country store, and, you know, right downtown. And yeah, that's what I feel is missing in a lot of the ski areas now, is they're mostly second homes, and there isn't just all the kids running around and everybody knows whose kids they are, so they can just jump on their bike and go downtown by themselves, and the dogs. And I mean, that still exists here in Telluride right now.
Yeah,
but
I sense that.
It's such a small place, and that's why I love this community, because it's, you know, you see everybody's kids running down the street, and they're going over to the park, and they're going over with their skateboards, and they're on their little bikes, and there are more dogs in this town than there are humans. And
yeah,
but that is what I miss about Aspen too, because everybody used to sort of live in the West End, or, you know, neighbors, maybe Mountain Valley when they first started building up there,
or Cemetery Lane. Yeah,
or Cemetery Lane. And that just, when I go back there to visit my family, that just really doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I hate to say it out loud, but it's really truly how I felt when we were there. I kind of felt like an interloper, or like an outsider. It's no longer, the memories are still there and everything's still there. Sometimes you bump into people, but it's totally different now.
Yeah, I still have a lot of friends, but they're kind of off in pockets here and there, you know. Most of them live down valley now. And I'm about to go over to a wonderful weekend with Stephanie Soldner at the Soldner Art Center. And we're going to be doing a tea ceremony on Sunday. And that's just this tiny little pocket in Aspen. And her parents built that place. And then there's Anderson Ranch, which is still wonderful. But it has changed so much. You know, the real estate is astronomical. The restaurants are expensive. You know, you can't buy anything in the stores except maybe Ute Mountaineering, and
which they saved Tom's Market, because they're now in Tom's Market. So at least there's like a local place in there that's, you know, a long time ago.
Yeah, but it has changed a lot. The world is changing. You know, we have to try and find the positive aspects of all the changes. And for me, one of the things that I am most concerned about is, you know, protecting our environment. Yeah. And the hiking trails in Aspen, and, you know, the North Star Preserve, and all those beautiful places that make Aspen such a special place, and Telluride as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's funny because I'm going to use an example of the Telluride Film Festival and say that I've experienced the Telluride Film Festival. The only thing I haven't experienced it as a filmmaker, which I've tried, but you can't. The only way you can get in is through connections, and I tried, but it's tough. But I did it as pass holder, which was great. You got into a bunch of stuff and got in and saw stuff, and then we decided, you know, when the passes started to get just astronomically expensive because it was a group of us, we decided we're just going to go in like the locals and stand in line and get tickets and wait for tickets, and that was a whole different community of folks that you meet than with the pass holders. You know, the pass holders own companies and own stuff, whereas the ticket holder people are just interested fan people of films that are, you know, live in the nearby areas. And so it was kind of cool because you got to meet these different subcultures within the festival itself. you know? And so by standing in line, you end up meeting a lot of the local people as opposed to some big person from New York, you know?
Yeah. Well, you guys, I'm going to have to wrap this up because I'm actually going over to the Roaring Fork Valley today to visit my mother. So, and my sister, Susan. So,
good.
Wow. This is, I mean, we could go on for hours.
We could. There has been a great conversation. A lot of memories, a lot of names, a lot of places to think about.
We're gonna talk to Andy Mill next. So do you have anything to say to him?
Oh gosh, Andy. He and I were on the ski team together when we were young, and we were in high school together. And we went from, I mean, he was my classmate from probably kindergarten all the way through to high school.
Wow.
So give him my love, and I hope he's still skiing. I'm still skiing. And I just feel like it was a special moment in our lives growing up. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I do feel like regardless of what age, going through the school system, there's a certain thing that binds you. Living in that valley, that it's almost as if you're part of a group just by going through it, you know? Yeah,
well, there's nothing that can replace history. I mean, we all have a history together.
Yeah.
That in itself is a remarkable experience, that we were all here together at that moment.
That's our Aspen for sure.
That's community. That's what
community,
it's all about.
Yes. Yes, it is.